But first, let me welcome up Melanie Courtright. Many of you know her, Executive Vice President, Global Products and Client Services for a little company called Research Now, joining us for the first time. Welcome, Melanie. And Melanie's going to share some results with us for, I don't know how many of you know or helped us out with this, but we have partnered with GreenBook and AYTM for the first ever grit sample survey. We've got all kinds of fun stuff focused just on sample, which Melanie's going to share. After that, she's going to be joined by Mendy, Orimland, not Disneyland, Orimland. He's opening up his own theme park soon, though, so stay tuned. And on one screen, we're going to have Lenny Murphy, Editor-in-Chief of GreenBook, and on the other, JD Deitch, COO of AYTM. SampleCon does not be responsible for any technical glitches. Melanie here promises she'll keep things going. And then we're going to open it up for questions. So please join us as we combine New Orleans, Atlanta, and Paris, all here for the first time at SampleCon. Melanie.
Thank you. I want to start by saying, what a room full of people, right? I mean, so if you know me, you know I'm super geeky about sampling. I just love it. I just love it. And so to be allowed to give you my opinion and have you listen and give it any weight in a room full of my peeps is an honor. And the reception here has been so warm, so I thank you for that. As mentioned, this is the first of its kind study, and I am super pleased to be able to show you some exciting results. There's going to be some surprises in there. Speaking with Patrick over the weekend and JD, and they'll be back on in a minute, and Lenny, there's some things that are going to challenge us and some things that are going to excite us and some things that are going to surprise us. So I'm excited to give it to you. By way of background, the GRIT study, how many of you have seen the GRIT study? Most of you. So we're gonna breeze through this part, and if you want to spend some time with it, make sure to go to GreenBook and find the full report. But what started this whole thing was this study said, you know, panel providers could use more love. This is a little bit of an odd scale, so let me just, my opinion is you could read this two ways. But 35% said that they're very or completely satisfied with their sample provider. The middle point was not a true neutral, so it was moderately moderately satisfied. So I like to think that it's a little bit higher than that, but still, people tend to use a 5-point scale and they see a 4 and a 5, and many of them gave it a 3, gave it moderately satisfied. So they're not as happy as they would like to be. And we know what people are looking for when they're going into research for sample. They're looking for quality, price, value, speed. They're looking for all those things. When Chuck spoke, I'm always reminded of the weight of our responsibility. The things they are doing with the sample we are sending them. TV Guide is making decisions. Shopzilla is changing their brand. Fandango is going to market. They're doing these big, weighty, business, life-changing things with our sample, and the weight of that is a huge responsibility. So I'm inspired by that, and I'm inspired by the things that you're going to see here about what we need to do next to take that responsibility seriously. So the next thing that GRIT showed us was that people still don't get mobile. Oh, people still don't get mobile. So mobile's not now, mobile's yesterday, right? At this point, mobile really is yesterday, but research is still looking at mobile as tomorrow, and the surveys aren't keeping up. 70% of clients say that their surveys aren't mobile friendly, and only 55% of suppliers. We have to get there on mobile. So the next thing that the GRIT told us was that only about 1/3 of suppliers are deploying surveys under 10 minutes, when everybody knows that what the respondents want is short surveys, but only 1/3 of us are doing it. So all these cool findings, 7 most popular research technologies, and then they say they hear the challenge that we need to change. They know we need to change. 77% said, yes, I need to completely rethink my business model. I need to make myself change, but we're not getting it done. And so this also led to looking at the things that are driving satisfaction from the GRIT report. Quality, cost, and feasibility rule. They're the things that they're least satisfied with. If you look at the bottom 2 boxes, they're pretty good sized bottom 2 boxes on quality, price, and feasibility. So this made the founders of GRIT and the founders of SampleCon get together and say, how can we work together to dive deeper into sampling? How can we spend more time? What can we do to better understand what it is we need to do? Let's focus just on sampling, as this conference does. So they issued a report, a survey. How many of you took the survey, at least started the survey? Wow, not a lot. I'm surprised, that's less than half. So the first thing they found is that survey-taking samplers don't like to take surveys. Like we genuinely hate it. We start it, we don't finish it. We take it and we probably pick it apart. Nah, that's a stupid question, and this isn't mobile friendly. I'm just going to bail. And so we didn't do real well at finishing the survey. So one thing that we got out of this is we're going to do this again, and we're going to leave it in field longer. We're going to harass you more because we think it's important enough that we want to make sure we get really great data. But there's going to be some things that we got out of this that are really important. So we're glad we went forward with it. So we got a mix of buyers and sellers, 137 buyers, 127 sellers. And even within some of the sellers selling sample, there are people whose job is to buy sample. And so we got a good mix of buyers and of people who primarily are involved in providing the sample and people who are primarily involved in buying the sample. You can see people at your organization, if you're a seller, that actually their job is to buy and acquire and collapse and blend. And so a few people move, but a really good mix of roles. So one of the first questions we asked them was, what types of things do you use, what types of techniques do you do and use to actually get the sample, get the people to take the surveys. By far, double opt-in panel building was the first. Followed right behind that by double opt-in community building. I'm not sure I fully believe there's a difference between the two. I think that's a funny thing that our industry does. A community is different than a panel. So you can see it's this double opt-in, pushing people together into a forum to be a part of a research world. You've got the using blending and using publishers. And so these are the things. There's no surprises in this. This is what we're doing in order to push the people together. Then we ask this, both the buyers and the sellers, so what are you doing to fulfill demand? When you don't have enough from any one respondent, when you need to find the sample, when you're looking for a niche audience, what do you do in order to fulfill the demand? Sample blending, number one. We push Research Now together with SSI and with Protege and with Swagbucks, and we push them all together. Lightspeed, GMI, we push them all together. We make it better. We get higher reach. Digital fingerprinting, we utilize marketplaces. We increase respondent engagement. We decrease the quota requirements. These are the things that we're doing in order to try to get the job done when sample is a constraint. So, and here's where it starts to get a little bit interesting. Everyone agrees that respondent quality is the most important thing. Everyone actually agrees that respondent quality is the most important thing. So you can see here, respondent is the biggest word. This is a word cloud off of the verbatims. Survey is there. I'm really glad to see the survey there, because how can you have a great quality data set? It's not just about the respondent, it's about the survey instrument. It's about all of it. It all comes together to make something special and unique. It starts to fall apart, though, when you look at the buyers and the sellers. Here's where some of your surprises are going to be, so pay close attention. The buyers, but the sellers are focusing on the process. I'm going to use digital fingerprinting. I'm going to use technology. I'm going to look at the survey design. I'm going to look at the process, the technology. I'm going to make it easy. I'm going to be transparent. And so they're focusing on the process to get them to quality. The buyers are focusing on the respondent. They want to know who the respondent is. They want to know where the respondent came from. They want to know if that respondent is going to give them quality answers. They're focusing on the respondent. They're not focusing on the process, although that's important. They're not focusing on the survey instrument, although God help me, I wish they would. They're focusing on the respondent. And so there's this separation that emerges in terms of what quality means to the buyers versus the sellers. We'll spend a bit of time on this one. You can see the sellers, they're saying transparency of source is the top number one thing mentioned for what drives quality, followed by accuracy, reliability, consistency. And again, they're looking at the data. They're not looking at the respondent. They're just really focused on that process and the technology and the data set. Validation of respondents, engage respondents, panel management, recruitment of panelists, and pre-screening methods. The buyers say the validation of the respondents, most important. We don't talk about that a whole lot. Maybe we should. Engaged respondents is second, still respondents. Flagging and removing responses, still about those respondents. They're really just focused on the respondents. They have a lot of anxiety about the respondents. I have a lot of anxiety about the respondents, but they have a ton of anxiety about these people. We've been doing this for how long now? Gosh, 20 years? They still don't believe these people are real. I mean, they don't. They think, they don't trust us still after all this time. And they're making million and billion dollar decisions with the data, but they still don't believe in us, and they still don't believe in the respondents. Transparency of source comes after that, and then panel management, incentives, and representative sample. Who even knows what that means, right? What does representative sample mean in 2015, 2016? We have to figure that out. We have to answer that question. So one thing I can tell you, I don't think it made it into the chart here. I'm going to back up just for a second. Representative sample to them, actually, if you read some of the verbatims in the report that's going to come out in a couple weeks, it means probability sample. It means they want it to be probability. They want it to stand right up beside and measure up against probability sampling in the good old days. That's what they want. How do we give it to them? How do we at least give them something that makes them confident and trustworthy when they're making billion-dollar decisions? So here's a snapshot of some verbatims that came out. Some people saying quality is getting better. Some people saying quality is getting worse. The people saying quality is getting better using the same reasons for the people that are saying quality is getting worse. Technology, it's making it better. Oh my God, technology, it's making it worse. So when you get the report, read the whole thing. It'll make you smile. We also did a max diff exercise. Now, I've been asked to remind you that there are only 174 responses on this, and so we have to take it with a grain of salt. But I will say, looking at the grit, looking at what I know of the industry, what you know of the industry, these findings seem really, really directionally sound. So I feel pretty confident presenting them to you. So this was, what are the quality drivers and what reigns is most important? By far, the one that came up was techniques used to ensure that people are who they say they are. That's the thing that they care the most about. The last one was actually DIY. We're spending an awful lot of time on DIY, so it's the lowest max diff score. And so we just need to make sure that we need to use research ourselves to make sure we're addressing what the buyers want. And we can force change, and we can push people to change, and we can bring things out before they're ready for them. We need to do that, because otherwise we become stagnant. But we can't do that in the absence of also working on the things they care about and giving them the things they want, which is around quality. So many are stuck in the pre-social local mobile era, thinking there's only about 26 people who are using microsurveys. There are only 42 people using mobile and app surveys. So this is samplers, this is sample buyers, this is sample sellers, and these people are still not really using some of the new things, and we're still not hitting the mark on making the buyers feel confident about who the respondents are. So what are we doing? What are we doing every day? What challenges are we solving? What technology are we releasing that's actually meeting a latent need? We're doing a lot of stuff, but is it the right stuff? I'm not so sure. New competitive threats and privacy legislations are the biggest threats. We could talk about this for days. Permission-based, everything must be permission-based, but everybody's feeling it. So this is just a little validation for you that when you stand in the shower and you worry about those cookies, you're not alone. Maybe literally not alone, who knows? Big data analytics, especially after a night on the town last night. Let's not tell any stories. All right, so the majority agree that providers need to be consultative and enforce quality. Now I want you to pay attention here because we're going to do something cool. So the majority of people believe that providers need to be consultative and enforce quality measures, right? Everybody says, yeah, those providers, they need to hold the line on surveys. They need to tell people when it's too long. They need to tell people when it needs to improve. But watch what happens when we separate it on buyer-seller. Completely different responses. Absolutely. This is the money slide. If you focus on one slide, focus on this slide. If you've fallen asleep and I've bored you somehow, wake up just long enough to look at this slide. When you ask the buyers and the sellers, should the sellers educate on questionnaire design? Sellers, yes, we should educate. Buyers, no, leave my survey alone, right? Restrict access to sample if surveys are not mobile friendly. Of course you should do that. Of course I should not send this member that I've been working for days to get to join my panel, who comes all the time on either a phone or a tablet. Of course I shouldn't send them to some crappy flash-based survey where they fall off a cliff. Of course I shouldn't do that. Buyers, no, I need my sample to be rep. I need you to send that person in and I can at least pretend that I'm rep, right? Charge more for sample if surveys are not mobile friendly. Well, yeah, it's harder to do that stuff. I got to beg these respondents to get through the surveys. Buyers, no, don't do that. But I want my sample rep. Not field surveys that are not device agnostic. Now, I do think we will field them, but in my opinion, I won't send mobile people to them. So again, there's some disagreement. Enforced length of interview limitations. The buyers or the sellers are saying, yes, I should absolutely enforce it. Look at the difference there. Like almost every buyer agrees that you should enforce length of interview limitations, and most of the buyers disagree. And then offer online sample of equal quality to probability sample. I don't even know what that means. And I'm a methodologist. Like, I grew up in phone. I know phone. I know research. I know sampling. I could preach for days on sampling. But so the buyers are like, yeah, do that. Do that. And the seller's like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't actually know how to do that. So big differences. And these are the challenges that we have to, like in 2016, I hope we tackle one or two of these. I really do. I hope we take one of these and say, how do we come together? How do we bring our view into alignment with the buyer's views? Traditional panels, it says, are looking for love in all the wrong places. I think this one is rendering a little weird, but I hope you can see it. But so there is, yeah, maybe you can't actually. So what the chart is supposed to be saying is, do you think that panels are dying? Do you think that that panels are in trouble? And so in general, there is a sentiment that traditional double opt-in panels are at maybe beginning the product long tail. They're starting to sort of struggle. I personally disagree with that. I think there's room for both. Phone is still around, mail is still around, focus groups are still around. I've been around long enough to know that things like traditional panels don't die, they just get buddies walking alongside them down the research path. So, only a third think that quality will improve. Only a third of people who took this think that quality in online sample will improve. That makes me sad. And then there are stark differences between buyers and sellers on this one. Is sample quality going to get better or worse? The buyers are saying, no. So the buyers are saying it's going to get worse, and the sellers are saying it's going to get better. So there's another big difference. Why do we think it's going to get better? Are we telling them why it's going to get better? Are we telling them about things they don't actually even care about? Like, why is there this dichotomy between the buyers and the sellers? So much rich information to think about here. And then if you ask them, why do you think it's going to get better? Why do you think it's going to get worse? Quality is important, but it appears a little bit elusive. There are differing views on what's most disruptive based on future perceptions. You can see here, this is why we're talking about technology. It's getting better because of technology, but it's getting worse because of technology. It's getting better because of price and competition and market-driven, but it's getting worse because of price and competition and market-driven. So the engaged respondents, they're getting worse, but the engaged respondents, they're making it better. So the same things that are causing people to think it's getting better are causing them to think it's getting worse. And why is that? We don't have a single measure of what is quality right now, and so we probably have to circle up on that and figure out how to actually prove or disprove the quality fears. A snapshot again, some quality is getting better and quality is getting worse. When you have some time spent on some of these verbatims, they're rich with information, hand-chosen. I won't read them here. I hate it when people read to me, so I'm going to skip real quick. Buyers and sellers also disagree on factors driving the future. So sellers are saying quality drives the future. Sellers are saying quality drives the future, but that's not what we're talking about, and that's not what we're building against. And so this is a little bit weird. Sometimes I think we just say what we think we should say instead of actually saying what we think is the truth. And then buyers are saying it's representative sample. Like, they really, really want us to figure this out, so we should at least figure out how to talk about it. Snapshot of different views on drivers of the future. Again, quality is getting better, and I need glasses. Like, Bonnie, you want to bring me your glasses? So you can spend some time on those. Two visions of the future of quality and what is driving it. First, quality is getting better, reach, hard to target, and global respondents. Mobile capability and apps, quality, technology and automation, representative sample, incentives, feasibility, and response rates. Quality is getting worse. Why do you think it's getting worse? Engagement of the respondents, representative sample, quality incentives. So I think you're catching the theme here. There are some firmographics in this just to tell you who took the survey, but I think the key here is there's two things. One is there's a lot of really well-intentioned, really smart, there's family in this room to me. I've worked alongside many of you. You've been my partner in my firm, outside of my firm. You've been my client, you've been my vendor, you've been my colleague in industry initiatives. A lot of really smart people in here, and we're all really well-intentioned, but there's pieces that we're not getting right, and this highlights that. There's pieces we're not thinking about. There's buyer questions that we're not answering completely. The other thing is technology is probably what created this portion of the industry, and it can be a blessing and it can be a curse. It can be a blessing because we can measure and we can speed up and we can automate and we can make things rapid. But it can be a curse because we can get really lost in the functionality of the tech and not pick our head up long enough to say, is the tech doing what the buyers want it to do? Or are we just really lost in what's cool and shiny? So my challenge out of this is to take a step back and say, how do I do both? How do I do things that are cool and shiny and automated and innovative, but also figure out how to be quality and answer the hard questions that the buyers are asking? So that's what I have to talk about, and now we're going to do the panel.
Thank you, Melanie. That was great. Very interesting. JD, Lenny, you see us? Am I in the right place for this?
Yep. Gotcha.
Okay, fantastic. So just a couple things to comment on, and then we'll jump into the panel. If you want, I can join you, because it looks a little empty.
Yeah, I feel alone. We should
So
have
anyway,
like a monitor right here with heads.
Yeah, we should put the screens right there, yeah.
That's right.
So
Disembodied heads.
as we all know, preparing for a conference, just in general, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And one of the two things that really come into play that people always consider is, where are we doing it? What's the place, right? Where are we doing it? And what's the price? And the good news is that next year, you can be anywhere in the world, and it's free, just like Lenny and JD. So for any of you that wanted to be in, like, the Bahamas, go for it. We'll have a live hookup there. And on that note also, there's so much talk in this industry about how we're a little bit behind on technology. I don't know, this is the first conference I've been at where we got France in the house, we got Atlanta in the house, we got live hookups, so I'm not sure we're that behind. Anyway, so kicking this off, I got good news and got bad news. Bonnie, bad news or good news first? Okay, so let's do the bad news first. The bad news is we only got 20 minutes or so for Q&A, and I want to refer to it more than a Q&A for a discussion. I think that's what we're going to do here. We're going to have a discussion with Lenny, JD, Melanie, and also the audience. So that's a bad news. We only got like 20 minutes left, and I'm taking up a lot of that time. The good news is that we have 20 minutes left. That's good news as well. And that's a great segue. You're all looking at me like I fell from the moon. What on earth is this guy talking about, the good news and bad news? And that's kind of what I thought of when I was looking at the data and the results of the survey, and Melanie alluded to it. Right to left, left to right. But that's exactly what I was thinking about, and some of the data and some of the results. When it comes to quality and what's driving, what are some of the key factors, there are some that say technology is going to make it better, some that say it's going to make it worse. And I think the other thing, there was one other one that stood out in the presentation about not quality, but it was, I can't recall what it was, but let's go with that. If we can go back to it. But what's going on? How can technology be better and worse? And maybe we'll start with JD. Is technology making it better or making it worse? What's going on here?
I think technology is driving something that's causing great sort of consternation for both sample buyers and sample sellers. Our business is fundamentally founded on people participating in surveys. And technology is changing the way that they participate in ways that affect the economics of our business. And so when you think about the implications of that, it affects sample sellers and sample buyers a little bit differently, but it still fundamentally affects them. When we think about what it means to try to produce an engaged respondent, there's a lot of things that as an industry, if we're not doing now, then we're already sort of behind the curve in terms of engagement and kind of building loyalty and all the rest of that. But then to go put them into sort of a punishing environment directly contradicts the types of things that we're doing to build engagement. When you look at it from the buyer side, there's a ton of business still, a ton of legacy business that's out there that hasn't changed. I mean, the great data show it, and it's it's not supposition for us. I mean, we can see this in our daily lives. So I think it's just a way of seeing that both of us are affected by it, and it's causing us to ask some pretty basic questions about our business model. And so I think in that way, there's plenty of exciting things that are happening with technology, and there's plenty of ways that technology can make it easier for us to reach respondents, can increase what we learn from them, to make it easier for them to participate. But at the same time, I think that threat with the economics is a real challenge.
Thank you. Yeah, so I actually recall the other item, which is even more interesting. This one's my favorite. I'm trying to figure this one out. So maybe, Lenny, you can help me out here. Price competition is making quality better and making it worse. And this is one I can't figure out how what is it? Is it making it better? And if it does make it better in your eyes, Lenny, how does price competition make quality better? And if it's going to make it worse, how so?
I don't know if it's price that makes it better or worse. I think competition inherently is a good thing. It makes people try and do things better, build their mousetrap. In this scenario, though, we have these two other key stakeholder groups in our industry. We have consumers and all the massive change happening in the consumer landscape with how they utilize technology, with kind of expectations on engagement. There's even studies that show that our brains are changing as a result of how we are so ubiquitously engaged with tech 24/7. So that's a big deal. And then we have the client side, which are also under lots of pressure, and their budgets are shrinking, and they're expecting more, and they're seeing disruption happen in their businesses and in their internal organizations and how they get data and use data. So it's natural that we're going to feel some pressure from all of those things to try and rise to the occasion and be more competitive. But it creates a lot of disconnect. In a consumer population that expects to be entertained with cat videos 24/7, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I like cat videos too. The research doesn't do a good job of engaging. We don't do a good job of marketing to the consumer the value of their interactions with research. And brands don't want to spend the same thing that they spend for marketing. I mean, if we look at programmatic, programmatic advertising, that's far more cost-effective solution for marketers than traditional marketing techniques like TV and print, et cetera, et cetera. So where does research fit between these two pressure points of a rapidly changing consumer base and a rapidly changing business environment, all focused on technology, on automation, on doing things cheaper, faster, and maybe better, maybe not better, but certainly having to rise to the occasion to do something different than we've always done it. It's a tough spot.
Look, I think it comes down to tech has a slightly different challenge in research. Tech is supposed to take things that we do with our fingers and automate them, right? But most of the stuff that we do with our fingers in research takes a brain. And so our challenge has to be to embed the intelligence of the researcher into the tech. And sometimes we get so busy just automating, we forget to embed the intelligence of the mind that was doing the sampling task into the technology that's going to do it for us. And so that's the challenge. So if you're just doing tech for tech's sake and you're not really thinking about how do I make sure I'm not adding bias with the tech, then it's a curse. But if you are embedding the intelligent mind of the researcher into the technology, then it's a blessing. and that's the choice that we have to make every day when we're building our tech products.
Yep.
Yeah, but
I think that's a great point, Mel. I think that's a great point, Mel. I think that is, we talk about DIY, and I don't actually think we've sort of seen the full breadth of that. I mean, the first step of it was automation, but dumb automation doesn't get us anywhere as an industry. I think that whole idea of trying to build more intelligence into the processes, I mean, that first step of automation is going to be necessary for the economics, but that intelligence is really where I think it's going to go. I agree with you completely there.
Okay, so moving
Yeah,
on
but how
to
do we
the...
apply that same thinking? Oh, sorry, Mendy. I just wanted to follow up on that.
Go ahead.
I agree with what Melanie, you're saying as well. But how does that apply to how we engage with respondents? And that's the critical issue. We're thinking about sampling. It's all about how do we get people to take surveys, period. Whether it's a mobile survey, a desktop survey, a mail survey, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 30 minutes, there is a value exchange that has to be in place. And I don't think we're doing a very good job of utilizing technology to create and reward folks in that value exchange model. And that may be, if there's anything that's going to bite us in the ass as an industry, it's going to be that. And I don't think it's about privacy. I don't think it's about big data. I think it's about boredom. And if we can't get people to really actively engage and feel like they're getting value out of it, then no matter how smart we get with the mechanics of research itself, the data collection, it's not going to mean anything.
All right, let's move on to the next question. Then maybe we open it up a little bit to the audience to share feedback. I think this is one that, dear to my heart at least, and I think many others that I've had conversations with at the conference. And I think it's kind of the SampleCon way. It's a little direct or goes straight into the business model. So quality, right? I think we all sit and we talk quality every single, I haven't been around for 20 years in this industry necessarily, right? So I'm sure this has been going on for 20 years, but ever since I've been involved or I participated, every conference, every discussion, sample quality.
May it always be so.
So here we go. Thank you.
Unapologetically.
No, and here we go. Okay, we're going to dive right into that. And the good news is that everybody agrees. The buyers and the sellers all agree we need quality. So what's holding us back? So my question is, anybody that operates a panel, right? If you operate and you need to acquire, some people refer to it as panelists. I like to call them people. These are people that are coming to participate in a survey. Look at the economics, right? You have to acquire a person. This is not somebody that's float. You've got to acquire somebody that's going to take interest in sharing their opinion, okay? That costs money. And the question is, how much money does it cost? Now, you got to retain them, and we're talking about surveys that we saw that none of us got through, or many of us didn't even get through the grit survey, okay? And this is our industry. We're familiar with the surveys, the survey design. All of us know it. Some reason couldn't get through it. I actually enjoy sharing feedback after I fly, and you get from Delta or JetBlue. I love where you lease a car and you get that email. I actually love to share my opinion, but honestly, halfway through I'm out. I can't do it. There's a massive grid in there that just on my mobile phone is just horrible. So anyway, the bottom line is we want to acquire quality respondents, but there is a limitation in the price that you can pay to bring them in. So my question is it's a general question. I know we want both, but for buyers, are we able and ready to potentially pay a higher price or to sustain pricing? Because there's a lot of people that feel prices are coming down. And the bottom line is, are we ready to pay a higher price to get a quality or potential quality respondent in the door that you might have to find them on mobile? So you touch on representative. You have to find people where they are. Are we truly ready to tackle it? And I'm not saying that's the only way, but that plays into it. You have to pay a price to get a user and retain them. So general question, maybe Melanie, if you want to maybe address that, and I'd love to hear opinions from the audience.
Well, this has been the Research Now proposition for a long time. We believe fully. We know that there's a great big set of buyers out there who want all three, the iron triangle of speed, quality, and price. They want all three, and they're not willing to pay less and end up with crappy data. And so our value proposition for a long time has been, you're going to pay a little bit more, but you're going to get data that you can make TV guide decisions on, and that you can make billion-dollar marketing decisions on. And there's others in this room that's their proposition too. So I do think that if you set yourself apart in quality, that there's a very large, strong market that's willing to pony up and be at the table with you in that area. There are also people who do good enough research. And so, so you just have to decide as a company who you're going to be. If you want to lay your head on your pillow at night and think, I gave a really great data set, that costs a little bit more. And then you find the buyer's willing to pay it. That's my point of view.
Okay. Anybody in the audience want to share their thoughts or questions for the panel or participate in the discussion? Got someone in the back?
Obviously, we talked about speed and price and quality as the kind of three things. Speed's obvious, price is obvious. But what does quality actually mean to you? And how do you go about justifying that to the client and proving quality? Because if that's what everyone's worried about, how do you articulate what is good quality?
Yeah, so I don't know, I'll also let JD and Lenny speak to this, but for us, quality means that when people go through the screener, that the incidences that you get match what you would get in the marketplace if you were to do it side by side with some other study. It's really about, is the data that's going to come out actually going to be predictive of the large market that I'm trying to study? You can see little pieces of that. People say it's about straight lining in a grid. Okay, if they're not paying attention, that might be a piece of it. It's about data traps. Okay, there might be a piece to that. It's about speeding, but it's not that for me and for us, for anybody in the room. I hope it's really about is the data, and you can tell it in the screener right away. You can immediately tell if you've got good data or bad data as people go through the screener and either overqualify or you end up with 17% of people saying they own a Segway. Not so. So it's about the data, and is the data predictive of the market I'm trying to make a decision about?
Lenny or JD,
I would agree. It's
anything
about
to
the
add?
data integrity.
Go ahead.
I think she's right. I mean, it's about the quality of the data itself, and that means the quality of the respondent. So are they honest? Are they engaged? Is it representative of the population that it's supposed to be? Those are the hallmarks of quality that, from a research standpoint, sampling standpoint, we have to pay attention.
So
I think the only thing I would add to that, which is that there are very different implementations of how those things are kind of put into practice. I mean, ultimately, the validation of a respondent as a real human being, as a single person and not multiple people on the same account, the validity of their answers. I've seen a lot of different implementations of it. And I think that, I think the observation that I can make without not trying to be too biased about it in a way, but I've seen it in traditional market research companies. I've seen it in newer companies as well. And I do think there is something to be said about the circular nature of the relationship between respondent quality and instrument. And so to the extent that I still believe that sample companies have a role to play in all this. We have a choice to make about the types of things that we let our panelists be exposed to. And because that really changes, it can be a vicious circle where you create a spiral of respondent quality, or it can be a virtuous circle where you actually get better participation.
Yeah, so I think also in the slides, there was the disconnect between buyers and sellers I think the buyers are very focused on the respondent, the person, right? That was quality is focus on who that person is. And I think, sellers, you didn't see it as much, but I do think that sellers or panel providers, anybody that has a community, whatever term we'd like to use for it, I do think from speaking to many, they are very focused on the person. And the trouble that they face is, for the most part, in order to find that person, they're coming in mostly from mobile these days, right? Where's everybody getting connected? Is it, for the most part, how much time in your free time are you on your desktop? Are you on your mobile device? So I think for a lot, the frustration for some sellers or folks that have people is they're saying, we have them, but we're on a different device. Is that an issue? And how could we, I don't know when, how, or how are we going to make that transition? Because many folks seeing that mobile, right, or people coming in from mobile gets you a little bit more of a representative, or that's where you reach them. They're ready to take it, but the design or the questionnaire, whatever it is, what was it, 70% weren't? Any thoughts on that? When are we going to do it?
It's going to be driven by clients, and it already is happening. So every major CPG company that I know, and I work with a lot of clients and lucky enough to work with 3 of the biggest CPG companies in the world at a very deep level, their budgets are already transitioning away from traditional trackers and traditional testing. So they're going to speak with their wallets, and the traditional model of doing long, lengthy, online-based surveys is simply going to go away because they get it. They get that they have to go where the consumers are. So they will make that change, as painful as it is, and they already are making those changes. It's going to take 2-3 years for that to run all the way through the system. So by the time we hit 2020, the era of 30-minute long tracking studies will be dead. So this will become a non-issue. So market forces will simply push everybody in that direction, and it's already happening.
Running low on time.
So we don't need to spend a lot of time worrying about it.
So running low on time, let's move it over. Peter, I think you had a question. Thank you, Lenny.
Yeah, I want to follow up on your question on Lenny's comments. People I talk to who are dealing with this stuff, the problem the clients have is the normative data that's in all these trackers and also normative measures that they've informally gathered over time, which I think is a big problem here. If anybody could comment on how you think we can deal with those normative data differences and get the clients over the hump. I agree with Lenny, but I think there's a real resistance to moving because of that reason.
So the way we're dealing with that, and I'd be interested to know if others have ideas too, because I really like the concept of this being a forum of thinking. But the way we're dealing with that is we're actually helping clients do analysis to say what parts of the survey do they really need, and then we help them take questions out of the survey that are nice to have and not need to have, using advanced analytics to say which of the ones are the ones that we really need the most. And then we're running side-by-sides. We're also playing with splicing and automation of splicing technology that gives them the data without having to ask everything. And then we're doing lots and lots of testing. So it is, again, that concept of taking, well, what would I do in my mind as a researcher and embedding that logic into the technology so that the technology can do some of it for them and they don't have to ask every question. There are lots of good things out there. There's good case studies, and maybe we should talk about those at some point. But it's possible. It's just a change of version. People don't like to change, and they get nervous, and it takes a while. It takes a while to do it well.
All right, so it looks like we are out of time. Thank you very much, Lenny, JD. Regards from New Orleans. Thank you so much, Melanie. We appreciate you presenting. Thank you so much. Thanks for the participation.